Hi guys, PP Reporter here and welcome to my channel. And that short clip that you saw in the beginning is exactly the sort of excitement and hype that I'm having for this particular cup, the Brawler Cup. So basically Silph has done it again, come up with a very innovative concept, and the idea this time is quite simple. They have divided the entire team of 6 into 6 different weight class, just like in boxing. So you have Mons whose weight defines which weight class they will be in, and they have sort of filtered it out so that there is an interesting meta and a gameplay across over here. And I will be covering the instant team building guide, but this is going to be a bit big because the meta is quite big. So without any further ado, let's cue the intro and get into it. Alright, yeah. So the way I'll be kind of going through in terms of team building for this is, on the left hand side you see all the 6 different weight class. Alright, and the vertical columns that you see, I'll be trying to kind of focus on what are the kind of mons you need to focus on in order to have in your team so that you have a very reasonable team. So you'll obviously see a lot of diversity in this meta because it's quite balanced out, so to say, and I'll probably cover on it as I'm kind of going through with it. So since you'll find a lot of mons, so in order to kind of highlight the ones which will be the most relevant, I will be highlighting them in a different color code so that you can take a good look at it, and maybe that'll help you build your team across. So the first approach is, in order to kind of have a mon which can defeat all the fighters, sticking true to the brawler aspect, the first mon I would recommend would actually be Mantine. Now Mantine is going to be in your heavyweight division, and it is going to live up to its name, and will be extremely good not just against fighters but also against the overall meta. So the mons which I have highlighted here are not just doing their specific role well, but overall in terms of the general meta they will also be pretty good and will have a higher win ratio. So that's how I've kind of narrowed it down. So apart from Mantine, Mantine over here can be running wing attack, bubble and ice beam. And apart from that, the other mon which does extremely well, takes care of all the fighters, that will be Drift Bloom. Apart from Drift Bloom, you'll also have Charizard. I'm really liking Charizard across over here because it does tackle a lot of meta mons across, and you don't need to be running the Air Slash variant. Fire Spin variant is more than enough, along with your Dragon Claw and Blast Burn. So again, Charizard I am liking in this particular meta. You'll find it in the middleweight class. Then comes Pelipper. Even with the debuff, it still does well. It's quite a spammy mon, and if you're able to use this mon well, you can definitely consider bringing it as one of your anti-fighters. Now coming into your bantam weights, so this particular weight class would probably be one of the weakest in terms of the meta, I mean. So over here, Whimsicott I find it does fairly decently, in sense of definitely beats the fighters in the meta, and in terms of the overall meta performs fairly decently. So if you're looking at an anti-fighter in this slot, you could go for this. And similarly, sticking in line with charm users, you have Wigglytuff in the featherweight as well. So if you're looking at diversifying, Wigglytuff is also a decent option, but you'll notice that these two mons have not been highlighted because in comparison to the other 4, I feel the other 4 does much better overall in the meta. Now if you look at Cruiserweight, they don't really have too many anti-fighters. However, Tropius is probably the only decent one over there if you're looking at an anti-fighter from the Cruiserweight. And finally, Zapdos. Zapdos going to be one of those mons which is going to lack in bulk, but it will be able to take care of the fighters nevertheless. So that will be for your anti-fighters. Second aspect will be in terms of dealing with all these flyers. So you need your basic mons in order to take care of these flyers, and most of them are going to be your heavy tanks and all. But surprisingly, one of the best mons for that you'll find in the form of a snowy cast form in the bantamweight. So this mon does well overall against all the flyers, and at the same time is probably one of the best mons in that particular weight class amongst all the mons there. So I will be expecting a lot of people to be picking this particular mon from this slot, as it's the most useful overall in the meta, and at the same time relevant in this particular slot as well. The second mon is going to be Melmetal. Melmetal has, as we all kind of know, is spammy in itself and has a good overall coverage in terms of being a mon. So it's pretty good. Along with it, you also have Probopass here. So I've highlighted Melmetal here slightly bit more because in the overall meta, it does slightly better. Although Probopass might be slightly better in dealing with a lot of these flyers as well. I believe Melmetal kind of wins it out if you had to pick between the two. Depends on your team composition, but majorly it probably might be Melmetal. So hence I've highlighted that. In the welterweight, you will find Frostlass. So I don't think it needs any sort of introduction. If you can play with Frostlass, if you are able to do your energy management well, it is going to be a beast almost in any meta. So Frostlass good as an anti-flyer and also fairly decent against fighters as well. So a good pick and consideration there. Now in the featherweight, I am really liking Lantern. Now the reason I like it is not just that it deals with all the flyers, but at the same time it is going to be pretty good against a lot of things in the heavyweight class. So it can almost beat almost all the opponents in the heavyweight class. Of course, there's a bit of a bait aspect to it as well. But being a mon which kind of deals with almost one weight class and the flyers, I kind of like it a lot. Of course, in the same weight class, you also have Stunfist, the regular Stunfist. So over here, I like the typeset it has for this particular meta because you don't find too many water types, you don't find too many ground types. There are, but in a fewer number. So Stunfisk would be pretty good in terms of being a bit of that mud boy, taking care of the flyers as well. However, since Lantern has such a more overwhelming usage, hence I've kind of ended up highlighting Lantern overall over there. Then coming to the cruiserweight Magnezone, again a lot of it is a bait dependent matchup, but yes, it does fairly well in the meta. And then you have Alolan Grappler. So people know how good it can be if it is able to, you're able to time and bait your moves across well. Finally, in the middleweight, you have your Zapdos again. So Zapdos over here, you're able to see is doing good against fighters and also good against other flyers as well. But you kind of need to be careful because it is going to be lacking in bulk. So definitely would require a shield investment. So you need to plan across your pick that ways. Otherwise, yes, you throw it in, it does win its patches, especially in the RPS sort of a format. And then finally Zwellius, I've mentioned here. So Zwellius is able to beat a lot of flyers, but it is a close matchup, it's a close affair. So what it basically, you can kind of use Zwellius as a somewhat of a safe swap in sort of a thing, but since it is consistently beating a lot of these flyers, hence I mentioned it across but not highlighted it, right? Finally, in slot 3, I want to be focusing across on our anti-tanks. So when I say anti-tanks, I mean anything and everything which is sort of bulky and not just your anti-flyers which are there. So dealing with all the anti-tanks in the meta, what I found was I really liked Primeape. Primeape I found to be doing extremely well overall in terms of dealing with these tanks, and also quite decent in the overall meta, hence I have chosen to name it first. The second mon has to be Machamp, Shadow Machamp especially. It is going to be such a threat, especially with Rock Slide. It is going to threaten even the flyers. So you will almost certainly be taking a shield from them one way or the other. So Shadow Machamp is going to be such a devastating force, because overall in the meta it's also so good. So however, in the anti-tank aspect, I found Primate to be slightly better in that role, although overall in the meta Machamp might be better. So hence Primate was first and Machamp immediately second. The third mon is going to be Vigoroth. So Vigoroth has its own specific use thanks to the neutral typing. It doesn't have the fighting type in it, but has the counter. So usually if you want to counter a charm, Vigoroth might do a much better job as compared to a Primate. So it depends on how you want to pick between the two. But yes, Primate does perform slightly better in the meta as compared to Vigoroth. Vigoroth is also good, hence I've ended up highlighting both. The fourth mon in the featherweight, I think this is going to be one of the strongest mon in the featherweight division, and definitely a mon to look out for because it is going to have so much of coverage. It is going to do well against other fighters even. It is going to do well against your other tanks. It wins so many matches, but yes, you'd probably want to be running Overheat, and that nuke move is basically what is really going to be threatening things across. So Kanto Ninetales, definitely a mon to look out for, definitely a mon to not sleep on. Now when we're talking about fire, we cannot forget Blaziken. Blaziken does a very good job as an anti-tanker. Overall in the meta it is slightly weak, definitely, especially when you have other fighters like Machamp, but in terms of the role it definitely does a good job, sometimes some places even better than Machamp as well. So in the middleweight section, for your anti-tanker, Blaziken is a good pick. Oh, what is this? Superpower exists, and then you have two mon declaring themselves as anti-tankers. So yes, as that meme suggests, you have Melmetal and Snorlax with superpower also being able to play the role of an anti-tanker as well, despite themselves being the tank in their own rights. So a definite usage for both these two mons as well. Now you must be wondering which one within the Bantam class would be coming in as an anti-tanker, and the answer is probably none. I really don't see any of them doing all that good of a job in the role of an anti-tanker, so hence I am going to leave that spot blank. Now these three which you see is going to be the core interplay which I see in this meta, and will be covering almost 70 to 80% of the meta. You can double pick from any one of the slots in order to fill up your team, and probably that will really add to coverage. But for the fourth slot, what I will be focusing on will be in terms of the overall coverage of what is left out, the remaining 20-30%, so that you are able to beat the core breakers which maybe arise from these three slots. So I will try my best to leave out these mons and share across the other mons, which does a good job in terms of being a coverage. So the first one will be in terms of Sableye. Sableye is doing quite well in the meta, and will sort of help balance things out with the other picks that you do here. But yes, if you do pick all the remaining featherweights, kind of goes out of the picture. So hopefully this alignment will help you pick the best coverage user for your team. The second mon would actually be Dugong. Dugong with its legacy moveset is still quite good. It is bulky, its Icy Wind will be able to debuff its opponents, and definitely does its role well. The third mon, I haven't highlighted it because overall in the meta it's not standing out all too much, although it is still good. Pidgeot, because Pidgeot does tend to even lose against some of the fighters, although it will beat a majority of them. But overall, as a coverage, it is a good mon to kind of overall keep. In the middleweight section, you have Empoleon. Does well, is able to sort of counter anything that sort of counters it fairly decently. So a good safe swamp as well in order to have in your team. Finally, in bantamweight, you can also think of Jirachi. It is decent in the meta and helps in the coverage aspect, hence I've mentioned it across over here. So if you are not wanting to take Snowy Castform, then you have other alternatives in this form as well. Now finally, I'll have to mention Mantine, I know I was trying to avoid the first 3 slots. However, Mantine is just so good as being one of those coverage mons which sort of covers for a lot of these slot 1 to 3 mons that I had to mention it separately in slot 4. So Mantine definitely showing itself to be quite useful in this particular meta. Finally, for slot 5, I want to be talking about those mons which are good overall in the meta, but they don't do a specific role all that well, as in they aren't your specific anti-counters or they aren't your specific anti-flyers or anything, but overall they're good in the meta, and you're looking something to fill your team with. These are definitely good considerations. The first one would be Talonflame. Talonflame, I mean, there's no need to sort of explain on how good it can be if you're able to place it well, if you're able to get its incinerate engines going and running. You can see the Dempsey roll take place if Talonflame gets its engine running. So definitely a mon to consider and look out for. Finally, in the welterweight, you have Diggersby. Diggersby also being one of those few mons which is both having your ground as well as fire typing with it. So will be a unique mon, has a lot of wins, and definitely is able to pull its own weight. Finally, in slot 5, you have Lapras. Now, Lapras sometimes gets outdone by a few of the other mons, but it does well. It is there, does its role mainly as an anti-flyer, and fulfills a few other roles as well. So a good mon to kind of keep an eye out for. And then you have Golbat. Golbat also does fairly well. Then you have Bronzong, also as one of the few anti-fighters over there, but tends to lose out to things like Obstagoon and even with Vigoroth as well. Hence, haven't mentioned it as an anti-counter user or anti-fighter. However, it does fairly decent if you're looking for something in the cruiserweight for that sort of a role. Finally, Whiscash is also there. Whiscash does quite well in its own rights, but it has bigger, stronger contenders in the particular weight class. So hence I haven't highlighted it, but it's definitely a good mon to consider. Finally, you have Haunter. For anyone who's used Haunter in any of the Silph Cups, I'm sure you understand how crucial it can be in turning around matches. It's definitely unpredictable, and it can really hit a person out of the blue. So and it comes in the bantamweight class. So if you are thinking of a unique team strategy, giving Haunter a consideration can definitely help you out. Finally, for slot 6, in terms of spicy pick, now I'm not really sure what I can mention in terms of spicy pick all that much, but the first suggestion that kind of comes to mind will be in form of a Shadow Dragonite. Now, this is going to be so oppressive, especially if your opponent is not having ice typing or maybe fairy typing. This is going to sort of really wreak havoc. So if you're thinking of spice, definitely can consider a Shadow Dragonite. The fast move damage is really going to cripple people, and I mean, it loses a lot of matches as well, but it does fairly well in the meta. So it depends on how you are able to use it. So will and can definitely be a good spicy pick for your team. Secondly, Beedrill. Beedrill does quite well against your fighters. Has a few losses, but then its unique drill run and the moveset can really kind of come into play and help out here. Especially if you're wanting to have a mon which has the poison jab, able to tackle fairies and charmers if they come in. So mon to fairly consider. Forestress is there if your opponent team doesn't have a fire typing. It can be a very good safe swap to consider. So hence I've mentioned it across over here. And Dragonair being there in the featherweight section. Now the basic idea is that if your opponent doesn't have any specific hard counter, this will be a pretty good safe swap. It does tend to lose out to other neutral mons even, but it can definitely add that pressure because it resists so many other moves, and overall is quite a decent mon as well. Finally, in the middleweight, Heracross does fairly well, reasonably, and is there as such, and finally Wormadam Trash as well. With the confusion, users going to be at a bit of a dearth, so you never know, these mons could kind of help out in some way or the other. So this overall is my take on the Brawler Cup meta. I know it's huge, I know it's vast. It really kind of gives you the option to kind of custom make your team, and there can be a lot of options to choose from. So but I hope this particular guide, you can take a snapshot across of it. Hopefully this will help you make a better team across, and I hope you guys do well in the matches. Hope to see you guys in the next one, and do like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the video. All these comments really help me out a lot, and also you can kind of join me on Twitch. I try to stream during the weekends, so you can probably join in. We can hang out across over there. So anyways, thank you guys for watching all the way till the end. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.